Good afternoon. I'm Caroline Cronson with Works in Process at the Guggenheim, and we are delighted to be showing the incomparable Wendy Whelan, ably assisted by Cameron Grant, and the choreographers and dancers Kyle Abraham, Joshua Beamish, Brian Brooks, and Alejandro Cerrudo. The show is going to be moderated by Ella Baff, and enjoy.
make sure that, I think that came on, yeah? Take two. Welcome to the Guggenheim Works in Process series, one of the most exciting things happening in the arts, and one of the most engaging series in the world. And you've just seen one of the most engaging and liveliest and interesting artists in the world, Wendy Whelan. I'm Ella Baff, the executive and artistic director of Jacob's Pillow Dance Festival, where Wendy will perform at our season opening gala on June 15th, and she returns to the Pillow later in the season in August to do a week-long run of a program that you're going to hear about today called Restless Creature. And it's a week-long engagement of the world premiere of an evening of works by 4 very different choreographers from 4 very, very different traditions. And they've all created work for Wendy and are also going to perform with her. So they're both amazing choreographers and astonishing dancers. If you've never seen them, can't wait. So they've all created this work especially for her. You're going to meet them all this afternoon. And while Wendy's getting ready to join us, which will just take a minute, I'll tell you a little bit about the genesis of this piece. Actually, many good things happen over good meals. And a few years ago, I had dinner with Wendy and said, if you ever decide to do something adventurous, call. It was kind of a no-brainer with an artist like that. Then I found out that she was doing this program, Restless Creature. Then I found out that the choreographers were Kyle Abraham, Joshua Beamish, Brian Brooks, Alejandro Cerrudo, and the doors were wide open, and then we began this little adventure. And that's how my proposal to Wendy started a few years ago. All of the choreographers have various connections with Jacob's Pillow in different ways. As it happened, Joshua Beamish is doing a creative development residency at Jacob's Pillow this month, in a couple of weeks, where he's going to create a new work. Kyle Abraham received the Jacob's Pillow Dance Award last year. Kyle and Brian will also have separate week-long engagements with their own companies at the Pillow this summer. And it's a happy tribe. So now I would love to call Wendy out. Please welcome Wendy Whelan. Let's talk about the piece that you just did. Okay. This is Shen Wei's piece called Body Study 3. Mm-hmm. I think he created it for you in 2005?
He did.
Yes. Was this the first piece that he created on point? We're not so sure.
The first and only. He just told me this, yeah.
So how did that whole thing come about?
I was actually working with Peter Bohl on a small group that he was putting together in his last years as a principal with the New York City Ballet. And he came to me and he said, I want you to be in my group of 3 dancers. Great. And he said, I want you to choose anyone in the world that you would like to have choreograph on you. And I was like, no one has ever asked me that question before.
I'm surprised.
Ballet's different. So I chose Shen Wei after seeing him at Jacob's Pillow. Peter drove me up. We saw Shen Wei, and I had heard about him, and I'd seen him a little bit, but when I saw his Rite of Spring, I was like, I want to do these movements. I want to feel what it's like. And so Peter Bohl made it happen for me, and Shen Wei would come, and I would rehearse all day, and he would rehearse all day, and we would meet at 8 o'clock at night, and we made this piece. And it was really hard. was really hard.
Well, he has a kind of, I think he calls it a syncretic movement approach, where he takes, far-flung cultural influences and movement influences, and then he somehow blends these things together in a very, very unique way.
He has a very, very clear vocabulary and dynamic and artistry, like extremely clear. He knows what he wants, and I love that in an artist. I want them to tell me exactly how to carve things out. And he even told me not to blink. He says, you're blinking too much, Wendy. We don't blink. It's like, I never thought about that before, so.
But you enjoyed that. You enjoyed the clear direction of it.
I loved the challenge.
Yeah.
It was huge.
And I think also his movement has a lot to do with integration of breath and mind and body and certain principles that he brings to it. Did he talk about that in the studio as you were creating this
Talked about
work?
so many things. And I just remember watching his movement, and I had gone to see his dancers, and they're like human calligraphy. And that's the thing I just couldn't get enough of, and I really wanted to become that paintbrush as much as I could.
Now the music, and we may be talking about music a little bit later too, but the music is Morton Feldman and Yannis Xenakis, which is not easy listening for everyone. Brilliant, brilliant contemporaries they were. And did you find that an adjustment to make in terms of timing and phrasing and all of that?
Absolutely. All those silences. Well, I've never done it with a live pianist, so thank you to Cameron Grant for learning this piece.
First time.
Both of those pieces last week and the week before. So
Wow.
Thank you, Cameron. So we had to really, there's a lot of measuring in that piece. It's incredible to do it with a live artist so that you can really converse. And so, yeah.
I think a lot of people really appreciate that, having the live music, so that they can get a little more of the sense of the in-betweens and the dialogue between the dance and the music. And I bet you enjoy that yourself. Yeah?
Yes, and it also creates this, unpredictability, which is scary but very exciting. So.
Anything you want to tell us about?
No, it's just it just adds that extra bit of fire for a performer.
So the ways in which you worked in the studio with Shen Wei, the difference of vocabulary, the difference of phrasing, the difference in music, how long did that process take? And was there anything else in particular that you did in order to get your mind and body into that work?
I was up many nights going over it in my head. It was very hard for me. It was like a tangle to untangle for myself up here, because it's so different.
Yeah.
And we started in December, and we did some in January, February. We premiered it in March, so we did a little bit over 3 months.
I think he did he do another piece for you?
No, that's the only one.
That's the only one.
Yep.
Amazing.
So far. Maybe another time.
And you mentioned that he had worked on point for the first time, so I imagine that was an adjustment for him.
The things
as
he was
well.
asking me to do, I was like, are you joking? You want me to try to do what? He's like, I thought I'd seen you do something like this. I was like, no, you've never seen me do. Some of his ideas were hilarious. So I can't even, they were amazing. And if I could do them, I would definitely do them. But
It'd be great to have some outtakes on that.
yes. But the fun thing about it was that we both took on the challenge of taking each other out of our and their comfort zone. We were absolutely uncomfortable doing work with each other because we were so east and west. But it was so much fun, and I love him dearly, and I just have the hugest respect for him, and I love being able to get to do that piece after 8 years. So
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So now, that was in 2005. Here we are in 2013. Were there stepping stones along the way to creating Restless Creature? I mean, was that the beginning of a path?
Well, it was the first time I
Or did
was
you just,
allowed to
forget
choose who I wanted to work with, and so it was very empowering that Peter Bowl gave me that opportunity. So I think maybe that did start the creature becoming restless, thinking, well, if I could do that and have so much fun and really learn something, why not try it with other people? So
we can thank Peter.
I think so. I thank him, yeah.
We can thank him for a lot.
I did that.
So in venturing, to the outskirts of the unknown and the unfamiliar, which all great artists want to do, but this is really, some of this stuff that you're doing for Restless Creature and that we just talked about with Shen Wei is really outside of the province of the neoclassical world of Balanchine that you were born and bred in. And then you have 4 choreographers who you've never worked with before, and they all come from very different backgrounds. So I bet people would like to hear about how that actually came about.
Fire Island Dance Festival, Dancers Responding to AIDS, Fall for Dance. I met all these guys performing alongside them on benefits and things like that over the years. So I had known them, I knew their work, I knew how the audience responded to what they did, and I could feel and see what was very interesting to me. And first person I knew I wanted to work with was Kyle. And I just was like, whoa, if I could do something like that as a ballet dancer, if I could transform myself just a little bit to feel what he does as a dancer, I just really wanted to try that. And I didn't know if he would be interested in working with a ballet person, but we just spent 2 weeks together and we made something that I really love. And then I met Brian at Fire Island Dance Festival as well, and then we made our piece at the Vail International Dance Festival last year, but I knew it was going to work into the Restless Creature. And I met Joshua Beamish at class. And we have the same birthday, and they were singing happy birthday to me. He says, it's my birthday too. He's just 20 years younger than me, so.
You never know.
You would never know. So, I found out soon after he was a choreographer, and I looked at his work, and he wanted to play with me, and I was definitely, let's do something. And then I thought maybe he would be good for this project as well. And then Alejandro is the mysterious one, and he lives in Chicago. He's a Hubbard Street resident choreographer, and I'm a huge Hubbard Street fan. And so I was like, if he's a Hubbard Street anything, I love him. And so we've just been working together now, and he and I have the most connection because he's much more of a ballet experienced person. He partners like a ballet partner more than anybody else. So
interesting.
Everybody has a different flavor, a really different flavor.
And were people very encouraging when you decided to venture out into this kind of a project? Did anybody tell you not to do it, or that it was, dangerous?
Not dangerous. It is dangerous. I have to take my shoes off in a second, and it's different.
Oh, God.
No, everybody.
That's
people were
exciting.
extremely supportive, and I'd been talking about doing something for a few years now, and the idea of the 4 partners being my choreographers was what I was really excited about, because I've worked with some amazing young male choreographers like Alexei Rabansky and Christopher Wheeldon, Edward Liang, and hardly ever do I get to dance with those guys, but we have such an incredible connection in the studio, and I love when they look at me and shape me and move with me, and I move with them, and now I actually get to partner with these creators, and I'm that much closer to the essence and the source of what the piece is. So it's a really different kind of thing to do.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about, the obvious fact that you've either danced with or performed the work of or been coached by some of the greatest partners and choreographers in the world, George Balanchine and Jerome Robbins, to name, 2 astonishing ones. So, and they also were of the 20th century.
Yep.
different sensibility, maybe.
Definitely.
And so different generation than the four that you're working with now. So you have so much experience either being the instrument of a choreographer or the inspiration for a choreographer or the real collaborator with a choreographer. Maybe you could speak to that a little bit and what the differences are maybe between working with some of the masters you've already worked with and the four guys.
Well, I worked a lot with Jerome Robbins, and he was very much a process-oriented artist, and that really shaped what I love about what I do. Is I love being in the studio. I love trying things and erasing it and trying it again and getting it right. And performing is something else, but the process to me is what I do it for. So I really learned a lot from him about that, and I'm trying to incorporate that into what I'm doing now and making it really much more about the environment, the deep connection between the choreographer and myself, and mixing these two very different elements, seeing what comes out of the mixture because they're so unusual.
Well, I imagine that in some ways you're kind of a choreographer yourself, in that your sense of, but almost your intuition about movement, what makes sense, what comes next, what should be edited or not, it's so evolved that
That's the part I like to do. I like to be the paint mixture. I like to be the brush, but I don't want to be the person putting the marks on the page, but I love to be the tool. And I love working with a choreographer that allows me to add some color and add some texture. And a lot of the people I've worked with have allowed me to do that. So
smart.
Sometimes, maybe, I don't know.
I think we're going to switch now to something that is a very different choreographic idea from Shen Wei and a very different style, and we're going to go from solo to duet. And I'll let you get ready, I think, while I introduce, yeah?
Okay.
Do you need a minute to get...
I do have to rip these.
Okay. The shoes are coming off. We're going to see Wendy Whelan and Joshua Beamish performing an excerpt of Josh's new work in progress. It's as yet untitled. He's still working on it. And the music is by Borut Kriziznik from Slovenia, a composer who's worked with some other ballet companies, actually. Very interesting composer. So now we'll see an excerpt of Wendy Whelan and Joshua Beamish. so exciting. I've been watching these in bits and pieces in the studio, and it's so wonderful to see it on stage. Please welcome Kyle Abraham, Joshua Beamish, Brian Brooks, and Alejandro Cerrudo. Gentlemen. Do you need a towel?
I'll be okay.
I'm sure they have one backstage. Okay, guys, Wendy's not here. Let's dish. What was it like working with her in the studio? Anyone want to say before she gets out here?
She's a terror.
Cracks that web.
You can tell, can't you?
As we suspected. Oh, wait, here she is.
I don't let that go on any longer.
If I could just jump in though, honestly.
Yes, please.
Before I began working in the studio with Wendy, I was quite nervous. Having watched her for years on stage and been enamored by her beauty and talent. So there was a little bit of anxiety before that first day, what to expect.
I would imagine.
Yeah, I'm also quite earthbound, so I was wondering how is this relationship going to work, but Wendy has been nothing short of inspirational. You know, she's so welcoming and allows me, I think it's probably the same for you guys too, to really go deep into your imagination and deep into your creative side, and it's just been really rich. Yeah.
Anyone else? You don't have to, but you can.
I felt exactly the same way as Brian did, and I will extend also that, I mean, Wendy being such an amazing dancer and a star, I was wondering if she was going to be one of these divas that you couldn't, and it's really a pleasure to work with her. She's not even a diva trying not to be a diva. She's
The audience laughs in recognition.
No, and it was very much appreciated, and I told her right away, and you know that makes you relax and just focus on the work and what it really matters, and so.
That's beautiful. I think maybe Josh and Wendy, I'll ask you first, because we just saw this beautiful work. And is this the first time you've actually performed it outside of the studio?
Yeah.
How'd it go?
Pretty well.
We loved it. Yeah? How did
Well,
how's it working?
it's kind of strange because none of these excerpts go together. So that's what is interesting about something like this, is I have to show what we have so far. And we've been working in these sort of like 4 days in August, 2 days in November, 3 days in February scenarios because of both of our schedules. So in order to have something to show, I didn't necessarily create consecutively. And then stuff that we made in August we haven't revisited at all. So that's next week. So I elected to just show what we had, so we could present this to you and involve you this early on, but none of these sequences actually connect. It's the beginning, something else happens, duet, something else happens, my solo into the duet.
It's interesting because they seem to make perfect sense, but yeah, I'm sure.
That's
sure
good. We're on the right track.
I'm sure you can mix and match in many ways. Had any of you seen any of the others' work on this project? I know you've all seen one another's work before, but had you seen any parts of any of your pieces?
I saw some of
for
the
this?
really beautiful footage that Nell Shelby was doing of Brian and Wendy's duet.
Ah, yes, yeah.
Gorgeous. So I saw that ahead of time, and I've seen each of the choreographers dancing and choreography separate, but not with Wendy.
Mm-hmm. Now, each of you come from very different backgrounds, and some similar backgrounds to hip-hop, the extreme work of action motion of Elizabeth Streb, ballet, classical ballet, etc. So maybe you could talk a little bit about, choreographing. Well, first of all, choreographing for, some of you have choreographed for your own companies. You are the resident choreographer of Hubbard Street. But you've all choreographed for other companies as well as your own. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about the different backgrounds that you have and that you brought to the proceedings for Restless Creature, what you kept, what you threw away completely. Not necessarily in that order.
I'm Brian, and I have spent most of my time choreographing for my contemporary dance group, Brian Brooks Moving Company, that's based here in the city. So working with other companies and other dancers is fairly new for me. But over the last few years, I've started branching out. Several years ago, I performed with choreographer Elizabeth Streb, who, if you're not familiar with her work, had me constantly jumping off trampolines and bungee cords and diving through glass. She's quite a genius. And really the extremes of some of the principles of movement that I'm investigating in my own work, such as going to gravity and going to fall. And so I work a lot with physics and momentum, and instead of masking it, really embracing it and using it as the guiding force for my choreographic investigation. So working with Wendy has been really interesting in the sense of, I feel like there's kind of a polarization in our working together, where instead of dragging you down to the ground with me, there's kind of these two extremes, I feel, of kind of like the earthbound and the skybound, and I think there's some electricity in that, I find it a very dynamic relationship. So surprisingly, it was very complementary, although at first we tried a lot of things in the studio. I'm very process-oriented, and it was, I should remember
I
this.
had to walk on you
Yes.
many times all over the place. We tried lots of crazy things.
You got to find out.
I want to wear stilettos next time, though.
Right. But I was curious about body as terrain, and we're quite supportive of one another physically in the piece. It's actually the first time Wendy's removed her shoes.
Yes.
So it's Wendy's
all nude,
barefoot. But it's been pretty exciting. I guess sometimes you have to go away from what you know so well in order to find yourself again, I feel like.
How about the rest of you? What you brought to this from your backgrounds and what you completely tossed and adjusted to?
Sure. I mean, I guess for me, I started out kind of in rave culture, and it was my friends in that world that told me maybe I should try a dance class. And I loved dancing, so everything that I was exposed to, Jose Limon, Merce Cunningham, Martha Graham, all those things heavily influenced the work that I make. And I think when I got in the studio with Wendy, I didn't want to make my attempt at ballet. I just wanted to make a dance and stay true to all of my influences. So I think there's moments in there where there's some Merce Cunningham upper curves that we might use, a lot of undulatory movement that you'd find maybe in a hip-hop-ish kind of realm, or just in a more urban vernacular. But I think we just like to move. I just like to kind of tailor the movement based on what my sensibilities might be.
Does that square with your experience in the studio, Wendy?
Kyle? I just remember the first day Kyle sat me down. He says, "Now, am I giving you all the challenge that you were hoping for?" And I said, "You can ease up on the challenge part, Kyle, a little bit. Just back off the challenge a little bit." But yes, you are.
And since we actually aren't, unfortunately, on the program, because your works are not quite as ready yet, but we're not seeing Kyle, your work, or Alejandro, this gives us a good basis for imagining. And Alejandro, maybe you'd like to also chime in about what you brought to this and what you eliminated or changed.
Yeah, when I got to the studio, I had some rough ideas of what I wanted to do, and right away I threw them all out. So what I've been doing with Wendy, we've been getting to the studio, warming up, or I was pretending to warm up, and then just kind of minute by minute feeling each other and taking inspiration from each other. And what I'm trying to say, I don't think it has been a very brainy process. It has been very much of what we felt in the studio. And I haven't been thinking, I'm going to use my ballet background, or I'm going to use my my knowledge with Yiri Kilian or Paul Lightfoot or Ohad Naharin, nothing of that has been thought. Whatever we did, I think it has been very much of the moment. Of course, all the influences up until here in my career as a dancer and as a choreographer, they stay with me. It's not something that I have to think about using. It stays with you. So it has been a very in the moment process.
It sounds like it's been very liberating for all of you. I mean, I suppose making a new work all the time and starting with a blank canvas it is, but maybe this one in particular. For you also, Wendy?
Definitely for me, yeah. Taking the shoes off, it was like taking a bra off. I was like, wow! I was like, oh my.
We're not doing that though. That's not an issue.
Feel the floor.
I was going to ask,
different.
are we seeing that this summer at the Pillow? Another first?
The interesting thing is the first time I worked with Wendy about a year ago, we did a piece on point in the process. And so when we were coming back to working together again, I walked in the first day, she's like, shoes, no shoes. I was like, what do you think? She's like, no shoes. I was like, good, let's do something different. And it was really great for me to have a second opportunity to experiment with what I could make for her. And so I think that I definitely adhere to a balletic vocabulary of my legs and lower body, but I like to completely turn upside down the port-de-bras and the coordination of the arms and present things that you've seen before in a way that you likely haven't seen before. That's what I said to Wendy. I said I like to show established ideas in a new context from a physical perspective.
Knotty conundrums, I see. Yeah.
Josh is a big challenge for me.
A brain twister? Brain body twister?
Yeah, it's not what, and like he said, he doesn't want to make anything that's seen before or predictable, and the body feels it. So, yeah, it's all new language.
Wonderful. And it looks so beautiful, really. Now, the process in the studio, I know when I went to see some of the rehearsal, you have to go outside of the work, you have to jump back in the work, your iPad taping, you're doing all kinds of things there. Maybe you could tell us all a little bit about that, going in and out of the work. People do it in film and so on, but how are you managing that in the studio? And
I bring two of my company members with me to the rehearsal process for a lot of reasons. One, I can actually step outside and see either someone in my stead with Wendy, or just see two bodies while she can have more time to work on something. I can go further with the other two, or have someone that she can reference if she needs to. I think that helps because the world is maybe so different of an extreme. But ultimately, when we're working, the one thing I always ask is, if it doesn't feel good, it probably doesn't look good either. So just to really stay verbal about how things feel, and if it doesn't feel good, we just change it.
And I imagine that you actively participate all the time in saying what feels right, what doesn't,
I'm
what
always
works.
saying, no, that hurts, no. But I do have to say that Brian started us off. He was my first choreographer, and he started being the choreographer and the dancer. He didn't have any extra eyes, so he brought in that iPad, and I bought my iPad, and the iPad is my friend now, and it's been sort of our tool because we're just the two of us. The rest of us, besides Kyle has his dancers, but the rest of us just work, just the choreographer and myself, so we don't have anybody else's eyes. So
a major endorsement for the iPad.
yeah, right, yeah.
Yes.
It's been helpful.
You heard it here at the Guggenheim. Wendy, given you've given the world some of the greatest dancing and some of the greatest pas de deux or duet work ever on stage, may I say? Let it be said, and also with some of the greatest male partners. I mean, Jacques Soto, Peter Boll, just to name two of the many. Could you describe a little bit the kind of trust and chemistry that takes place or should take place in the studio to get to pas de deux heaven with a partner?
Pas de deux heaven is the best thing ever. But pas de deux heaven is different for each person and each couple. And that is something you can't predict, you can't make it, it just arises itself, and it's a natural thing. So that's partly why I'm really excited about this, is because with each of these gentlemen, something totally different is coming out between the two of us. And I could never predict what it would be. I still can't tell you what it's going to be, but hopefully with the dances that we're making together, there's going to be something really magical and very unique coming from the both of us. And I was working with Kyle, and I really had no idea how we were going to pair up, and well, like everybody. But it just started, his movement with his music, we would just start to do runs, and I would just feel like I'm starting to understand what it is that it is between us. I started to feel this palpable feeling of what we are together. And so it's just very, very cool feeling to just have this birth of a thing happen.
And is there an inner narrative usually? I mean, I think a lot of people wonder about that when you're on stage, a man, a woman. Is there an inner narrative that goes on that only you know, nobody else really knows, but maybe they're intuiting or they're trying to guess at? Or
for me, usually that happens in a dance. A lot of times it's abstract, and then over the years, some kind of strange story or poetry will start to evolve in a piece, but that takes time, lots of time. I don't know how it is for you guys.
Yes,
but,
how is it for you guys in terms of the chemistry when you're dancing with a partner?
I mean,
oh no! Why did I pick you for?
What? What you said?
Because you need it.
Yes.
Yeah, I think sometimes, I don't want to be the only one speaking, but I think sometimes
ahead.
it just
Yeah.
gets to that point where, you know, I might start laughing in the middle of it and I have to like concentrate, but I need the laughter. You need to have fun. You need that kind of rapport so you can continue to work and you feel inspired to work. I think without that, there's too many roadblocks along the way.
It's a real conversation that just grows between us, and it's not usually spoken. It's just a physical conversation, and it starts to morph and become the dance.
And I don't usually dance with partners. I find I don't often choreograph myself in duets because I isolate myself into solos so I can be on the outside and watch what's going on. And because sometimes I get too stressed out about being the choreographer and watching what else is going on stage while trying to be a supportive partner for someone else. So the nice thing about this is it's just the two of us. There's no other people dancing around on stage that I have to worry about. But to not normally put myself in a duet and then do a duet with Wendy would be the most daunting aspect of the project for me, is I'm constantly being like, I want to make sure that I'm partnering her the right way, and she's so good with me and nice to me about it, and it's been a long time since I've been actively partnering in almost a balletic sensibility. And so she's like, just give me an extra little push there and stuff, and that really helps me to focus on being a better dancer with her while she's focusing on doing my steps. Yeah. So it creates a really nice exchange that way.
And how about you,
Well,
Alejandro?
in a way, I'm thinking that, I mean, we started this duet a couple of weeks ago, and yes, we're learning movement and we're learning steps, but I also feel we're learning to listen to each other without using words. In many moments, we're trying difficult partnering, difficult sections that we still need to work on, and then maybe the music is very fast, and I tell Wendy, let's listen to each other rather than trying to listen to the music. Yeah. Let's first understand each other and go with each other, and then the music. And that's, again, like feeling what your partner wants to do, what your partner needs you to do for her or for him. And that's a beautiful relationship to feel. And hopefully the audience also, when two partners work together well, of course there is that extra thing, not just the choreography, not just the movement, that extra thing that you can really tell what it is that brings to the work.
This is all sounding very romantic.
It might be romantic, but it's also very physical, something that you listen through changes of weight and dynamics. And sometimes the eye translates that as something romantic, but it can also be purely physical.
But it's very intimate, maybe not in
Yes,
such a romantic way,
intimate.
but it's very intimate
Yes,
because
that's
you
the
really
word.
are
Yes.
you're really feeling, all the curves of that person's body and the weight and the shifts and the trust and focus and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It's very present. I mean, as far as my work is very specific, but if I go out of my piece and start thinking of a narrative or what it might mean, I'm doomed. So I find I think about Wendy in the performance of the piece more than I think of myself. It's like all my focus is with my partner and on the task at hand. And then, hopefully choreographically there's image and metaphor, and, we've very carefully suggested things by what we're doing, but the attention to the present moment is really key, and I think quite exciting. Definitely for us and hopefully for you.
It's very interesting that you say you're only thinking about Wendy and the partner, because I think everyone agrees that the most beautiful partnerships are the ones in which the person is so generous to the other one, and that's part of what we feel on stage when it really works. Which brings me to Balanchine, inevitably. I can't help it. Because he, I think he disputed that his ballets were, purely abstract, and said something like, famous quote of his, "Man, woman on stage, you have a story." And he said, actually, this is a quote from him, "In my ballets, woman is first, men are consorts. God made men to sing the praises of women. They are not equal to men, they are better." Gender politics, anyone?
Yeah, hand me that paper.
Gender politics, anyone?
It's different. We're
yes,
different
in
a
the
little
21st century.
Yeah.
Would you like to jump into that?
I grew up with that story, that idea. That is something I think is very beautiful. I'm very interested in not that all the time, and I'm actually I want to do my side of the work, and I want to support these guys as much as they support me, and in a lot of ways. So it's where I feel at right now.
I heard part of the audience clap and part of the audience boo. So I think we're onto a hot topic here.
Yeah.
Yes. Anyone else about these relationships in ballet and traditions and conceptions?
That's ballet too. Ballet is very
preconceptions?
different than what we're doing.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I grew up listening to Prince, who says, I'm not too woman, I'm not too man, I'm something that you'll never understand. And I think that translates.
That's a great follow-up to the Balanchine quote.
Yeah, I mean.
That does it.
So
yeah.
maybe when people were doing the tondus, they'll listen to Prince, but I think, we're not, I don't feel like in our duet, it's a man and woman duet. I feel like there's other things that we're thinking about, elements or different animals or, creatures and things like that. So it's not so one-to-one in that aspect. And I think ideally what we're playing with is not really knowing what the other one is at times. Maybe we are the same thing, maybe we're something different. And maybe the audience is trying to figure out which one we are, and that I'm really interested in.
And does it matter? I mean, in a gender-fluid world now, does it, do these things matter?
Wendy and I are definitely a man and a woman in our piece, but it's about our two stories and how we intersect as individuals over time and as our connection changes, and we have a story or theme that we're building together that will probably become more apparent as the piece is completed. But it's definitely, I'm creating it as a balance. You aren't going to see me doing big overhead lifts with her. But the nature of what our connection is constantly remains kind of a bit of a mystery, because we're discovering each other as the piece develops.
I think we're also informed by our perception, so it's like as a choreographer and director, you only have so much say in what the piece is going to be interpreted as. in my company, I primarily partner the men with the men and the women with the women. So the duet you'll see this afternoon, I would have made with a man, had it been with my company. But for this project, I'm making it with Wendy, clearly a woman.
Part man.
And, but I think
Woman.
from my point of view, from the choreographic standpoint, from the choreographic standpoint, it could have been 2 men or 2 women, and I would find those all very interesting and evocative and beautiful. But I think you'll see it today with a man and a woman, and then you'll bring all of your expectations and associations and experience to what you see. So I think that has a lot to do with how we perceive the work.
I like the exchange of being able to change the women and the men too. Like Kyle brings his dancers in, and he brought in a woman and a man, and I'm learning the man's part, and he's learning the woman's part. So if he has his dancers do it, it would be opposite, which is so interesting, I think.
Yeah.
So I'm watching the boy, he's watching the girl, and when we do it, we're the opposite. So it's just really cool to be able to switch into different, and it all is just malleable and transferable and absolutely beautiful either way. So.
Well, may I say that you have great taste in art and great taste in men.
Thanks.
I'm going to let you get ready for the final piece.
Let's go, Brian.
And we're going to excuse ourselves in a minute. We're going to end the program with a performance of Brian Brooks' dance called First Fall, to the beautiful music of Philip Glass. But first, I want to thank Mrs. Cronson, Duke Dang, and the fabulous staff at the Guggenheim, all of you who shared your works and process with us today. Thank you all for being with us, and thank you for supporting the arts. See you at Jacob's Pillow this summer. Ladies and gentlemen, an excerpt of Wendy Whelan and Brian Brooks in First Fall to the music of Philip Glass. Thank you.